everybody, it's Nathan from Nintendo Village here, and I'm just doing a quick first impressions video of Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. So obviously this game came out a couple of weeks ago and we've heard quite a lot of complaints about the port to Switch. We've seen some issues about, frame rate drop, visual fidelity, kind of compression overall, as well as lag input. Yeah, at least the developer have kind of come forward and said that, for the foreseeable, I think their main aim is to make sure that the Switch version comes up to par with the rest, or at the very least, is at a point where it's manageable. So we're kind of holding off on a proper review. I wanted to wait until I was a little bit through the game as well to kind of talk about it. So as you can see, this is the game running on Switch. I don't think it looks too bad. I think they've done a really admirable job of porting it, but there are some points where textures become an issue. I myself have run into a few bugs that have either caused the game to just crash, or have seen things clipping in and out in weird ways, or characters shuffling around. Clearly, this needs a bit of polishing up, and even stuff like, you can see the texture on this statue in front of me right now, stuff isn't as sharp as it could be. And also I do have to say, considering I've played a lot of the old Castlevania games, especially this seems to me to have been based on stuff like Symphony of the Night and then Order of Ecclesia, as well as Dawn of Sorrow. Those games feel much sharper than this game does. I haven't played it on PS4 or any other platforms, so I don't know how it's going to feel comparatively. But what I can tell you is, this game does feel a little bit sluggish. Did I just jump on that platform then? When I maybe shouldn't have been able to. Was that a bug as I was recording? Or did I just get up there in a way that I didn't realise I could? Oh no, cool, yeah, there we go. So I love the old DS games as well. I like Portrait of Ruin included in that. And this game as well, with the shard system, it feels like a really strong continuation of the Soul system from Dawn of Sorrow. It's cool, gives loads of different interesting abilities for you to play around with, adds a lot to the world in terms of things you can do, and I'm really enjoying that. This is my little familiar guy. I can swap him out for... I've leveled him up loads, so I probably won't swap him, but I can swap him for like a book. I can swap what my magic does. So you have directional magic, which is this. So the right analog stick is going to be your arm at all times. And what this can do is, with the press of R or ZR, you can do either an attack, or you can do like a grabby physical move. And that's what your shards involve. And then as well, if you press X, you always have a magic button, so this will fire a directional attack. At the moment, I've got it on Quake. If I chuck that over to... what was something else I had it on? Conjure... Gale Crawler. Yeah, I didn't enjoy that one so much. Head Flail. You were good. You were good. Yeah, Head Flail's awesome. That's such a massive attack. So, I don't want to talk too much about the game in terms of visual fidelity, because that's something that is being addressed, and it will come up in our final review, which we're going to kind of talk about once it's been updated. There's talk of it being updated in mid-July, which is obviously coming up to now, as well as in August. So, we're not going to leave it forever. They don't get until next year to fix the game when they released it now. In that case, they should have released it later, which for a game this late in terms of its Kickstarter goals is already an issue. But I'd rather they released a better game later than perhaps the product they have in terms of backlash. But so if you've ever played a Castlevania game before, especially Aria of Sorrow, Dawn of Sorrow, any of the other DS games, you're going to feel right at home here. This is the map. I'm currently going around exploring. This is the castle. I'm fighting a guy called G something. Completely forgettable. Basically a stand-in for Dracula. But, it's properly over-the-top, campy kind of stuff like that. Enemies like this everywhere. Huge gothic enemies that take inspiration from Castlevania. There's even, the ones that don't have a direct counterpart, like the Medusas in the old games that fly around. There's a clock section where there's an enemy that flies around with the same pattern as a Medusa, but it's not called the same thing. These enemies in the ground are kind of familiar to, enemies from before. There's a lot of stuff that's brought over, but not in as many words. Which, no, I'm absolutely fine. I've got nothing wrong with Igarashi. Laying homage to a genre that he spearheaded and he made. If he wasn't allowed to make those games, absolutely, give it a new lick of paint. And that's what this game is. This game is Castlevania, and I'm super happy for that. One thing, I don't think the music's as memorable. I've got a lot of the music, especially from listening to it in Super Smash Bros. Recently. A lot of the good DS games music is in Super Smash Bros. And I've just been putting that on as I go around my room and absolutely loving it. And this doesn't have... A lot of this music doesn't have the same urgency. I don't know if it was just the time, but a lot of the DS games music kind of has this real rhythm and pace to it. Like a proper precision, a lot of drumming and stuff like that. And a lot of this stuff doesn't drag, but it doesn't feel to have the same urgency and doesn't feel to make the world feel as alive. I haven't got through all of it yet, obviously, and I'll try and have a proper listen to it. But for me, it's not as memorable, and it doesn't convey as much the action of the game, which I don't know if is something to do with part of the game's slower tone overall. I don't know if that's a decision that they made in terms of, okay, let's make this more gothic than more energetic, because, the DS games were, even Dawn of Sorrow and Aria's Sorrow were designed a little bit more Japanese, a little bit more frenetic, and I don't know if that's a response to it having too many Western influences or something, but yeah, maybe these are meant to be more gothic and meditative, and that's what we're meant to be going along with. Oh, hang on. Yeah, stuff like this. Once you jump between the two areas, that should be... Oh, come on, man, that should be instant. Yeah. Especially because I've got to judge my jump to know where I'm going. So as I come up from the lower layer... Okay, so... That's quite a gap. And I have to remember where I jumped and make sure I do the right thing. This has happened so many times in this game already, where I've tried to jump through a platform, and then the second I get up there, the game's like, oh, you didn't do the second jump you needed to do, and that's because I was waiting for 5 seconds to enter the room and didn't know what I was going to do, so then I'm being taken back down to the previous platform. If you look at stuff like this as well, kind of the background here, I think in the PS4 versions, stuff like this is really heavily detailed, and there's a lot of lighting. This seems to be the same architecture as the PS4 games in terms of the background, but what they've done is, instead of having the lighting and the effects, is they've slapped one shader over it, so they don't have to process all of the lighting. So just rather than dial it down in terms of pixels, it seems that they've just washed one thing over it, so it's less processing. Because there's still a lot of lighting going on. Because look, this little torch in front of me now, that does seem to have reflective lighting that, as far as I can tell, is kind of genuinely affecting around it. I don't know. I don't think it is, actually. I think that may just, because that torch isn't interacting. Yeah. I think I'm possibly giving them too much credit here. I think what they've done probably is actually put the... They've just put the reflection as part of the design of the building, and the only thing moving is the haze around the flame. Which is fine. These reflections aren't moving as they don't need to, but maybe, again, that's something that's been dialed back. I don't know if in the PS4 version I'm going to try and do a side-by-side comparison in a couple of bits so I can see for myself what's happened. Yeah, a lot of stuff just seems to have been pared down. Even the main character herself, it seems really like jaggedy, and like they just seem to have crammed this onto the Switch. I would have loved to have seen it. I mean, I know it's not the way they built the game, and it would have been very different. I would have loved to have seen this as a pixel art game similar to Dawn of Sorrow, or similar to Order of Ecclesia, which was a beautiful pixel art game. I think people seem to forget that game, was absolutely gorgeous. Yeah, and the Symphony of the Night as well was timeless. I'll come down this bit. That's fine, we'll go another way. This game, in this version, doesn't fit the Switch. Maybe they can get it up to the right sort of amount so it feels like I'm really playing it. But I'm torn because I'm having a lot of fun with it. I'm really enjoying this. I love my Castlevania games because as well I love the old Castlevania games, and I don't think there's anything particularly wrong with this game, but it doesn't look as good as it should. It does not look as good as the PlayStation versions, particularly if you've got the option to play the PlayStation version or the Xbox version as opposed to the Switch. Then maybe that's where you should go. But if you only have a Switch as well, this is a really good game. I'm having a really good time. I'm also happy that I've got it on the Switch because, to be honest, I don't know if it's stretching it to HD. This is exactly what I mean. I don't know if it's stretching it to HD, but this game looks really good when it's in handheld. I think the compression to the smaller screen kind of helps to smooth out the jagged edges that happens when the game's kind of blown up to a TV. A lot of the issues that I see here, and I'll try and get some footage of me playing in handheld in here. A lot of the problems that we have in HD really kind of tidy themselves up. Oh, there you go, I just got a shard. It doesn't make it perfect by any means, and a lot of the cutbacks they've done in terms of those backgrounds in the previous scene, as we can see here, those aren't going to be fixed. But just a lot of the stretching out issues and a lot of the kind of attention to detail stuff that that when we look at it here is missing becomes a little bit easier on the eye. So I've been playing it more often than not in handheld because as well I loved the DS games, and Castlevania feels like a handheld game to me. So I think that's a great way to play it. I've really enjoyed it. But as a console game, yeah, maybe think about this on PlayStation. But still, the world design in terms of, unlocking shortcuts, defeating enemies, there's a load of really cool enemies. The bosses so far have been pretty interesting as well. Not just in design, but also in interactions. One of them was forcing me to learn how to parry and guard, and how to deal with other enemies doing that. It's not kind of just a big HP sponge buried in the shape of a monster. There is really a lot of cool design in terms of how you have to interact with them and how you deal with them and learn about it. So, yeah, this game's totally interesting. And this is just a first impression, so I don't need to say much beyond that. But I'm having a good time with it. I wouldn't really dissuade anybody if they have a Switch from getting it. I think it's a fantastic game. I think in handheld, it runs really well. And I'm yet to kind of compare it to really see if I'm missing out on too much. So maybe with a bit of hindsight, I'll look back and be like, oh wow, this game doesn't feel the same. But for me so far, I'm about 13, 14 hours in. It hasn't stopped me from having fun. If you like Castlevania games, this is Castlevania, with a new lick of paint. And that is a really good thing. And as well, it's kind of going to be a good thing to support this in the hope that, we get a sequel to Bloodstained. Because this is a genre that really deserves to continue, and not just, the Metroidvania terms of stuff like Hollow Knight, but Castlevania as a series, or at least this iteration of it as such. It's something that deserves to be celebrated and deserves to be played, and, I think this is a great game. I'm looking forward to playing the rest and seeing what else I unlock in terms of abilities and shards, and maybe in a couple of weeks when we get the big update, my review will cover that and we'll talk about it, because if it makes some significant changes, then yeah, cool, maybe this game will be even more fun to play. As it is, really fun game, held back by some visual difficulties and perhaps some performance problems as well in terms of bugs and slowness. If you have a PlayStation and you play docked, buy it on PlayStation. If you only have a Switch, this is still a really good game, and handheld feels great. So a full review will be coming in the future, hopefully after a update, and obviously keep tuned to Nintendo Village for more Nintendo coverage. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Thanks for watching. My name's Nathan, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe, check out some of our other videos, and visit thenintendovillage.com, your home for everything Nintendo.